Do you handle customers, maybe internal or external? And do they ever get angry with you? So what do you do in that case? So the question is, how do you handle irate customers? Very tough, right? Especially when someone loses their control and is at your throat. You really don't know what to do in that situation. Well, I've got an answer for you. So we're going to look at a framework today that will help us to understand how do we go about handling people when they're angry. It's called the 4A framework. Very simple and practical as well. So here it is. The 4A stands for acknowledge, apologize, assure, and act. Let me simplify that for you. The first one is acknowledge. Now, what does that mean? Whenever someone comes to you blaming you for messing up something or in general is not happy with the scenario, that's when people complain. So when people complain, what do? Well, you need to first of all acknowledge the fact that there is a problem. Now, that does not mean that you are responsible for the problem, but it basically means that you do acknowledge the fact that there is something out of place. So the first step that you need to take is acknowledge, because when you do not acknowledge that there is a problem, that makes people even more angrier. And then you don't really know what to do about it. So step number one is to acknowledge there is a problem. Step number two is apologize. Now that's a big one, isn't it? Now, when do we apologize? Of course, when we realize that it's our mistake, we definitely need to apologize. We need to say, look, I'm sorry. It shouldn't have happened. It happened, but I'll fix it. So don't worry about it. I'm really, really sorry. That's apology. But you also apologize at times when you haven't made a mistake. Now, why should you do that? Let's say you have a friend of yours who has been absent for work for a couple of days. And when he returns to work, you try to cheer him up. So you walk up to him and you crack a joke and your friend doesn't respond. And you get to know that your friend is not responding properly because he just lost a family member and that's having an impact on his mood. So what do you do next? You look at him and say, you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I just wanted to cheer you up. I'm really sorry about that. Now, why do you say sorry? Are you responsible for the death of his family member? Not really. But you say sorry because the situation demands it. So sometimes we apologize not because we are at fault, but because the situation demands it. So here's the thing. When you apologize for a mistake that you've committed, we call it humility. When you apologize a mistake that you haven't conducted, but the situation demands it, that's called maturity. So at times you have to be matured. So step number two, apologize. And when you apologize, you will see that the temperature in the room automatically drops, that people now become more receptive because they understand that someone has taken accountability for either the actions or the situation in general. Step number three, therefore, is called assurance. What is assurance? Here, you're telling the other person that, look, situation was not the right situation, things went wrong, but don't you worry because I'm here to help you. We will ensure, or I will ensure everything possible to make sure that we come back to normalcy, that the situation is rectified, that the problem is solved. That's called an assurance. And it also puts the other person at an emotional ease. But that's not sufficient until you do what is asked of you to do in step number four, which is to act. You might say 1,000 things, but they mean absolutely nothing until you're willing to act upon what you promised. So step number four is to act, is to take the right course of action to solve the problem and also to make sure that it does not reoccur. So the 4 steps that will help you encounter any situation where you have an irate internal or external customer, here they are. Step number 1 is to acknowledge that there is a problem. You may not be responsible for it, but at least acknowledge there is a problem. Step number 2, apologize. Sometimes you apologize because you have made a mistake, and therefore out of humility, you say, I'm sorry, we'll do something about it. Or in some cases, you apologize out of maturity when the situation demands it. Step number 3 is to assure. Give proper assurance to the other person that, look, I'll take all the necessary action to fix this. And step number 4 is you act upon your assurance. You take all the right steps and measures to ensure that the problem is solved and also to ensure that it does not reoccur. When you apply these 4 stages or these 4 steps, you will be in a far, far better situation to handle the person as well as the situation. So the next time you have an irate customer, you know what to do. So go out there and test this formula out for yourself.